Well, good morning or good afternoon, I should say, and welcome to another edition of Lunch Update, our program to help you stay curious, connected, and informed, all live and in real time. I want to have a special shout out and welcome to our friends that are joining us from all around the state of Wisconsin via Wisconsin Eye. Welcome. I appreciate that you are here with us. This conversation and all of our Lunch Update programs are made possible by our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, with an additional thank you to our Accelerate sponsors, Baker Tilly and Easy Office Products. Today's program will feature a conversation with the president of the Wisconsin Technology Council, Tom Still. But before we get to Tom, here are a few chamber updates. Registration is now open for our 72nd annual dinner that is happening on October 21st at the Monona Terrace. As a reminder, it is never too early to get tickets, as we always sell out within weeks of registration opening. And so move quickly and then don't say that we didn't warn you. You can register for the event in the link that's in the chat, but also by going to our website at madisonbiz.com and going under chamber events. There are also limited sponsorship opportunities that are still available. And if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, please contact our Managing Director of Engagement, Jill Wood, at jill@madisonbiz.com. You can also find the link in the chat. Also in October, chamber staff will head to the Bay Area in Silicon Valley for our annual San Francisco Meets Madison event. We're bringing along several of our area's top emerging companies, including the AI startup Strudel, who just won the Golden Suitcase at the 12th annual Pressure Chamber last week. On October 7th, if you are in the Bay Area, and you can join us for a networking reception with Wisconsin and Bay Area entrepreneurs, investors, and other business leaders to celebrate Greater Madison's thriving startup ecosystem. And you can register for that as well on our website or in the link that is in the chat. And now for our guest and my friend, but it will be hard for me to do a short bio, but I'm going to do my best. Tom Still has served as the president of the Wisconsin Technology Council, the state government's nonprofit science and technology advisory board, for more than 23 years. And this April, he announced he'll be retiring from the position this fall. And during his tenure, Tom saw the state's tech sector grow into a $50 billion a year powerhouse, responsible for hundreds of thousands of jobs throughout the state. Before the great work that Tom has done at the Tech Council, he worked for more than a decade as the Wisconsin State Journal as the editor of the opinion page. In his retirement, he will continue to write his Inside Wisconsin column that we see throughout the state on Wisconsin businesses and public affairs, and he has written that column since 1991, and it is distributed, as I said, around the state to more than 24 news organizations. So, Tom, welcome back to Lunch Update. It's great to see you, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Zach. Yeah, it's great to see you. Thanks to the chamber for doing this update, for your sponsors and for Wisconsin Eye, helping to tune in some people around the state.
Yeah. I want to go back before we go forward. I was thinking about this last night. I was going to say I was thinking about this in the shower, but then I didn't want to create that image. But it's also I was thinking about this last night. It's 2002. I have decided to run for city council. I'm coming out of entrepreneurship and the small business ownership, and so I am certainly a pro-business candidate. The then chamber president, Bob Brennan, who I think still has emeritus status on your board, asked me to come in for a meeting. Didn't know me, wasn't a member of the chamber, but he wanted to get to know me. Neil Heinen was there. And they're walking me around the office, and then there's this large office in the back, and there is somebody whose byline I had seen many times, but is toiling away at the sort of creation of the evolution, I should say, of the Wisconsin Technology Council. And then sort of fast forward, our paths crossed many times to the point where at one point, as Deputy Secretary of Commerce, I'm on your board. And then not too many years later, a few years later, I'm an employee of yours running the Wisconsin Angel Network. And so I think back about our own stories and how much you've meant to me and how much you've meant to the state. But I wonder, just for the people of the state and for the people that have tuned in, as you think about these decades of service to the state, and and I illustrated the outcome already, right? The outcome is irrefutable. Like what the work you've done and what it's produced, nobody can quibble with. But I'm curious about, is there a word that defines the work that you've done it for 23 years? You'll continue to be a champion and a cheerleader moving forward. But is there something that you would say is one word or a phrase that defines the work?
Convener. I think it would be that. I think that our main power has been, being able to try to pull some people together, whether they're entrepreneurs, investors, folks who are involved in state government, folks who are involved in local government, others in the economic development world, such as you. And this would be a great time. I want to reflect more on our relationship over time, but this would be a great time to talk about how the chamber was very directly responsible in some ways for the creation of the Tech Council. I go back to one of your predecessors, to Bob Brennan, who is pictured right here. This is a picture I have, and it's going to come to you. It's Bob is on the left here, Tommy Thompson in the center, then governor, and it's inscribed, Bob, best of luck with win. And so that was something that preceded us. And the chamber had been very active in the creation of University Research Park in 1984. In fact, as a reporter back then, I covered some of that. And the first Wisconsin Venture Fair, which morphed into our early stage symposium. So the chamber's been at the heart of this for a long time. And so thanks to you for continuing that. And then you mentioned commerce. I mean, you were part of what I still think of today as the dream team of yourself, Secretary Dick Leinenkugel,
Yeah.
Aaron Alber, who's now director of University Research Park, and Jamie Wall, who's now a state senator from the Green Bay area. So a great group that I think came together to get a lot accomplished. But I go back to your question, convener. I think that helps with defining. If there's one word to define the kinds of things we've done, that's it.
Yeah. So Tech Council was created in 2001. As I said, we met 2002. You had just made the transition from the State Journal. How do you think about how from that time in 2001, coming in that office in the chamber, building something not brand new, but anew, right? You had to create something viable. How do you think about how the role has changed if you think about that office and at East Washington Avenue to being out to the research park today?
Yeah, I think obviously those are strong Madison roots, but over time we have made sure, and this was part of our mission from the beginning, is to build it into more of a statewide organization to involve people in different places around the state. So that's one thing, definitely. I think we've gotten a little more sophisticated. And part of this, I had been the opinion page editor, as you noted, and previous to that, led our political team in terms of political coverage. So I think I came in with the desire and hope that I could help build our sophistication around that outreach to especially state government. Yeah, I think finally we did a lot around events, and again I had some background there, and we have a tremendous team to this day here at the Tech Council, and I think our evolution has included trying to be better and more frequent around getting those events done. So those are some things that I think have evolved.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about use the word evolution. How about moving forward as you think out of at post-retirement, if you had to crystal ball a little bit, what do you think the role of the Tech Council will be moving forward for the state?
That's where I think the convener term actually applies again. I think that's where we can continue to be productive and really hopefully helpful, very much so. My successor, Maggie Brickerman, she's was one of the co-founders of Generator. I think she also comes at it with some background in how government can work or should work. So I think that'll be helpful. I think communicating just broadly, my column Inside Wisconsin has been a part of that over time, but I think we do some things that to get the word out about what's, some of the good things that are happening in Wisconsin. Again, I go back to the roots with the chamber, decades ago, and how that led to some of the things that are happening in the Madison area, which you continue to help foster. But I think now there's more going on in other parts of the state. Milwaukee, clearly, which back then you could have said there weren't many folks who were tuned into the need to see what's going on in tech. Green Bay, Eau Claire area, La Crosse, a bunch of other places that that evolution has continued.
Yeah, I'm curious, as you said you were you went from cub reporter to political lead to editor. And the little known fact, you're an author as well. The
Mhm.
beyond just your column, but a book author. The At that time when you left, certainly the newsrooms have changed today, and you know
Mhm.
this, but I'll say to the audience that my mom was also a reporter and
Right.
editor, and so I grew up in the journalist world. And I think about how much the industry has evolved. And when you left, maybe there was a little bit of an inkling, but it wasn't certainly where we're at today with sort of how the newsroom has changed. And so you left a little bit when things were still, the newsrooms of old, how we viewed them. Um, so why did you transition? I mean, if somebody at your level, with the experience you had, the predictable thing would have been that you would just ride it out and end your career in the newsroom. So what inspired that switch to take
Mhm.
on this
Yeah.
quasi advocacy, quasi support, quasi economic development? So a little a bit of everything. Um, what inspired that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in some ways, it was more about who inspired it.
Mm,
When the So getting back, like you said, Tech Council created 2001. It was an outgrowth of what was called the Wisconsin Economic Summits, uh, of part of which I moderated. These were like 1999, 2000. Then Governor Thompson looked around and said, "Hey, other states have things called tech councils. I want one of those." And did come out of that box with the governor and the legislature. And so there's an initial board that was appointed that included some great people. Well, at one point in 2001, right after it was organized, some of those folks reached out to me. Uh, Mark Buer, who was Secretary of Revenue, later ran the research park. The late Carl Gabronson from WARF, Bill Linton from Promega, Todd Lindstruff from Michael Best, many other great people. And at first, I didn't want to do it. And then about 9 months down the line, they asked again. There'd been an interim kind of piece. I said, "Yeah, let's give it a try." And you're right about the newsrooms at that point were still at their peak. Really, this is 2001, 2002.
mhm.
Uh, and sure, there were changes in the offing, but I can't say that those necessarily were on my mind when I made the switch. There were a lot of things that I thought would be a great challenge, and building on some things I had done. Like I'd been entrepreneurial at the State Journal and within Lee Enterprises with things like a project that was called We the People Wisconsin. So it was a collaboration, radio, TV, paper, citizen based, putting on events that we thought were interesting and informative. And so at that point, I thought, yeah, let's give this a whirl. I'd already been in the newspaper game like 25 years. So uh, yes, if you do the math, yes, I've been working for like 50 years.
I mean, by
It's
every
not
measure,
very favorable math.
that's right. By every measurement, you've been successful. But I'm curious, in that, maybe it would be considered a risky transition, right? Going from something that you're respected, you're good at, into something that was very much unformed. And as you said, both entrepreneurial and entrepreneurial, right? You had to build something anew. What
Mhm.
about being a newspaper editor prepared you for your work at the Tech Council?
A bunch of things actually. Eh, Hitting deadlines.
Yeah.
I was very accustomed to daily deadlines, and as you well know from your work at the chamber, there's always something else coming down the pike, and so that was important. The notion of being able to communicate to a broader audience, as you noted, editorials. My column had already been out there. Um, the other thing was I already knew a lot of folks. I mean, my contacts around the community and the state were pretty broad. Uh, Simple things like AP style, Associated Press style. You had to be in the more. You knew it already, but you were fully indoctrinated when you were here, and it's it's using that removes speed bumps for reporters and editors who are very busy and can do things without it, tripping all over different styles that they don't like or no style at all.
Mhm.
So I think those combination of things, and of course being a manager within the newspaper itself, I think it all added up to things I could port over to the tech council and make them useful.
Yeah, I will say, I joke, kind of joke that my mom used to give me back the birthday cards with red ink that she would edit. And then, it was a whole nother level when I came to work for you. But I will tell you this, that we have internally, we have what we would call the chamber style guide for how we do things, very much based on AP, but also very much based on you. And there are some things that I still think about when I write, more than versus over, right? You are in my
Yeah.
head every time I use the phrasing or abbreviating months. And then forever, the use of a percentage sign versus spelling out the word percentage. But now the AP says the percentage sign is okay. So how do you feel about that? Are you good with it?
I know you and I both took note of that. That was a change in dogma that I never thought would happen. Yeah, I'm glad that some of it went away with you. I hope you're not haunted or anything by it.
Well, it's funny, we have three J school grads on staff here, and then me, and so there's a fair bit of love of the work, but also of AP style as well.
Oh yeah, and J school grads. I mean, again, sure, the profession's changing, the industry's changing, but these are people who are trained to be adaptable and to take on a lot of different issues and just settings and all of that. So I think it can help in terms of general approach to issues and events and items.
Yeah, I agree. I think the flexibility, also the what you started with is the notion of a deadline, right? Like
Yeah.
and you were tenacious about deadlines, even where I was like, if you give me another week, I could get more data. And you're like, no, this is the deadline, so let's get it done. All right. So you informed the board in a letter in April that you were going to retire, but there was a key line in there that I noted where I think the actual quote was, "Not going away, I'm just transitioning." And then I text you and said maybe you should call it a rewirement instead of a retirement. But
Yeah.
as you think about what that is, what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, for starters, my last day at Tech Council as president is October 3rd, so I'm still around for a little bit. I will continue to serve on the board of directors, and so that's good. And I don't want to do it as, you know, looking over shoulders or anything like that. I just want to be helpful. And then again, with Maggie coming in, to the extent I can help advise as she transitions, so be it. That's all good. And I will continue to write the column Inside Wisconsin. Um, and then I already serve on, you know, a handful of different other boards that are mostly nonprofit. And yeah, I think I'll continue that just to be in touch.
Yeah.
I might go back write another book. Uh, the former ambassador Tom Loftus reached out to me the other day. He was ambassador to Norway and then speaker of the State Assembly for that, and he said, "Oh, now you can finally write that tell-all book."
That's right. That's right. The do you think you'll have a role other than the column that still sort of plays central to the technology sphere? Do you see that as that was a moment of my career, and now I want to write about other things and think about other things, or do you still intend to keep a focal point on technology?
Well, I think for the last 23 years, the my columns kind of hit this somewhere in this triangle: tech, the economy, public policy. I
Yeah.
think that'll still largely be true, but I think I should be and probably will be able to venture off into some other areas as well. I spent a lot of years covering politics, so maybe that could work its way in, or just other human interest kind of topics that may follow travels around the state and that and yeah. So I think that will grow, and I tend to remain close to people who, whether they're at the university. By the way, I'm on two boards there that do intersect with technology in the economy. And just people like yourself and others who follow economic development, make economic development happen in this state. So I think that will remain a focus.
I think it'll be interesting I'll be interested to hear for the depth and the comprehensive takes that you do on a regular basis in the column. I've also seen how fast you can produce them, right? I think people would read that column and say every column is a new take and an interesting idea and a deep dive. None of it is superficial, right? It's all well reasoned and thought out. But I've always marveled how fast you were able to produce that. But what will be interesting is now with a little more time on your hands, does the work expand to the time? You know,
Oh, I know, that's a danger. You're exactly right. Like, well, my next column will be about mRNA
yeah,
and some of the things going on at the national level, some of the ties to the University of Wisconsin. And I actually thought about that yesterday, started, gathering string, started writing in this morning. I think it's 90% done. Hopefully, I will not let that work expand to the time because it might take something away from some of the spontaneity around it.
yeah.
So you're exactly right. One of my gifts, I think, has been able to write quickly and
And
get back to
thoroughly,
our deadline
quickly,
discussion.
and anybody can write quickly, but you write quickly and thoroughly, which is the
Oh,
true talent.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Um, I know part of this decision is you and Kathy, have a love affair and a great relationship, and spending time together in the marriage is important to you. And she
Yeah.
has retired after many years of service to our country and to our state. Um, but I'm curious about now that you guys are going to spend more time together. Do you have trips planned? Are you officially, truly empty nesting at this point? What is future Kathy and Tom look like?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, thanks for mentioning Kathy. Yeah, she's a retired Army major, which means I'm basically on a need to know basis. And so I eagerly await my orders as to what happens in terms of vacations and all of that. We just went down to Nashville to visit a son there. You're right. The youngest son, Nicholas, is now a freshman at Marquette. Um, and Kathy, by the way, while now retired from the State Department of Veterans Affairs, which she did after the Army, mostly after the Army. She had a law degree, so she's now practicing law largely we have a place in central Wisconsin, so she's finding a lot of clients in there and estates, wills, trusts, but also towns in Adams County, which is an interesting thing. So
Yeah, I was going to mention it because she gave me her new business card when I saw you in DC at our event there. I was going to say, just as you retire, she's gearing back up again.
exactly. So maybe I'll be a paralegal or something.
That's right. And she could use a driver, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
As I went back and reread a lot of your Inside Wisconsin columns, and somehow, somewhere along the line, I got onto the secret pre-list, right? I get them early before I see them in print. So I'm always able to see your column, a day or two before I see it around the state.
Hmm.
But I went back in my email and pulled out some of the Inside Wisconsin columns that you've written over time. Um, and there is certainly a trend line there that's optimistic, right? You certainly
Yeah,
are writing in a very optimistic tone about the industry and the sector
right.
overall. You certainly expressed that same optimism in the letter to the board. So,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts around the state's tech industry today?
yeah. That's me, Mr. Sunshine. No, I mean seriously. I think the state is building on, as you noted at the outset, a strong foundation that's involved a lot of people. I mean, not just us. I think we've helped along the way, but many other groups, including the chamber, that have really stayed focused over time. I think the life sciences sector in Wisconsin is very strong. When you think about companies, Epic to Exact Sciences to many others, that's all part of that. Um, And, there was a time when people in other sectors didn't really know how they might possibly intersect with tech. Agriculture, tourism, of course, manufacturing. I'm optimistic about that as people many increasingly see, that's part of it. Um, there's still some challenges. As you know, from your time at Commerce, the Act 255 tax credits were enacted And they were really a national leader at that time in terms of how they unfolded and have continued to do marvelous things over time in terms of leveraging private investment. I would suggest it's probably at least 900 million in private investment because of those tax credits. But I think it's time for the legislature and the governor to move on, to improve upon that foundation and modernize those credits in a way so we can keep up with the Joneses in our neighborhood, the Illinois and Michigans and Ohio's. Um, so that's a challenge. I think we probably have some demographic challenges in terms of, are we going to have enough people who are trained and skilled enough to be a part of the workforce? Um, yeah, there's some really good things happening. AI, for example, AI and the rise of data centers. While we have to be careful about the energy demands around that and making sure we have a really balanced energy system, I think that that's going to be good for the state as we become more of a hub. So a little bit of both there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about AI. Are you being replaced by it? Is that what's really going on here?
Oh, I should have been replaced by a bot long ago.
But kidding aside, I mean, I agree with you. And I was at Epic's UGM last week. You and I sat there last year together and
Mhm, mhm.
listened to the future. Many of the things that we heard a year ago, they've already executed on. There was a lot of AI last year, even more AI this year. You can really see the promise of artificial intelligence as it moves from generative into the other forms of artificial intelligence. Um, but there's certainly a lot of concern. I mean, you hear it a lot. You hear people nervous about what does it mean to the economy, what does it mean to jobs, what does it mean to the environment. As you think about that, this a bit of a wild west of the next evolution. How do you think Wisconsin benefits directly and the new technology, and then but also can mitigate some of the risks that might come with it?
Mhm. Um, well, as we discussed a little earlier, the notion of all of Wisconsin's historic sectors potentially being able to benefit from it, whether that's tourism, ag, manufacturing, forestry. These are all things that are part of our past and will continue to be a part of our future. So I think the people in those sectors will continue to leverage that if they see opportunities. Some There's a direct opportunity of jobs that come from the construction of data centers.
Hmm.
Now that won't last forever, but I think there's enough happening in the state now that it really is a part of the employment picture. Dangers, you know, I think some of them are in education. Will we have a generation of kids who say, I don't really need to learn that. I'll just ask AI. And you can hear that and just you can see it with some younger people.
Hmm.
Um, it will really help healthcare, I think, over time in terms of speeding research into therapies. I think I could see that happening, especially around things like there's a lot of discussion right now around mRNA at the federal level and some of the restrictions on those kinds of vaccines. Perhaps AI is gonna help there.
Hmm.
Um, so it's still a mixed bag. I think everything from is it going to help with crime or not? It's yeah, it's 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 still it's still a wild west, as you say.
Yeah. So as a journalist, and once a journalist, always a journalist, right?
Mhm.
How do you feel about the state of the industry, particularly when it comes to AI? I mean, do you think that's another disruptor? Do you think it's an accelerant that helps the industry? I won't name names, but we saw recently a challenge that one of the papers had where a reporter used not permitted AI and it kind of hallucinated a story. Do you think that AI is just another headwind for journalism, or do you think it can actually become a tailwind?
Maybe a little bit of both. You just pointed to an example where if you're relying on AI exclusively, and I mean, it can easily be misled and have those kinds of hallucinations, as you noted. Uh, it can be a tailwind in the sense that editors and reporters today are probably more busy than ever because in some cases newsrooms are not as large. And so for reporting projects that involve da- data analysis and more research, that's where AI could perhaps help with busy staffs and in terms, and again, it all has to be checked out, but it could be a good start on some research that goes into quality journalism that perhaps wasn't there before.
I've thought about this of like, does the job of a reporter still hinge on collecting information, but becomes more of a prompt writer than a content writer? And then the
Hmm.
role of the editor is to make sure that what's written is real. Whereas before, I think editors had some level of comfort with journalists of most of this is going to be, unless you're just a really bad journalist, but most of this, if not all of this, is going to be rooted in truth. The job of
Hmm.
the editor was, to make sure, like, did you ask this question? Is there a blind spot? Did you miss something? Um, and so I often wonder about, does the role of a journalist kind of change to be more of a researcher and a prompter, but not an actual writer? And then how does that change the editor?
Yeah, I think the editing function will remain, as you say. This is about fact checking and did you ask this question? Did you ask that question? I think reporting in the way that the writing has changed is, um, you know, back in the day, an editor might tell you, a lead in one, and that was, a way of saying it's basically, got to fall within, two typed pages. Um, Today, I think it's largely even briefer because of what's going on with other, media forums and, outside of newspapering, um, and the immediacy of getting that story out is a pressure, and in both ways. I think it can be good in terms of people aren't spending all their time just thumb sucking around it, but it's got a danger too because you can be wrong, and you can have an initial story out that lacks perspective in a way that would be more helpful for readers. And there's a fairness aspect there too. That I think in this political environment we're in today, I think reporters have to, true news reporters have to be sensitive as to what's going on around them and trying to frame their stories in ways that reflect, the all sides of what's going on.
Yeah, I said at the outset of the interview that the tech economy grew from, I think, what everyone acknowledged was a very modest component of the state's economy now to $50 billion a year industry,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where almost every company, if not every company, should consider them or does consider themselves a tech company. I would argue it's certainly driving much of the Dane County economy. Um, but I'd also argue it's driving the state's economy, and certainly in some pretty distinct ways. Um, you'll be leaving as there's some big questions about what are these new headwinds that we had not experienced for things like tariffs and threats of research funding cut. As you think about what it takes to maintain what's been built, um, do you have suggestions? Do you have recommendations on what those of us that will still be very much in the trenches doing the work can do to keep keep secure what you've gained over the last 2 decades?
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, all kudos to our strong board of directors on which you once served, and um, it it has provided a statewide perspective that maybe with I can't do entirely because even though I know Wisconsin quite well, there's only so much time you can be on the road, right? So we have directors everywhere. And there was a recent report by M25, which is a venture firm based in Chicago. And as you know, they kind of routinely look at the top um, sort of tech hubs in the Midwest. Well, this is something that would not have taken place some years ago, maybe even a decade ago. There were 8 Wisconsin cities in their top 64. Madison was ninth, Milwaukee was 14th, but then you see Green Bay, you see Eau Claire, you see cities all over. La Crosse was in there, Oshkosh area. So I think in Racine Kenosha. So that speaks to the fact that there's more happening now statewide than before. So what are the dangers there? I come back to I think legislators in both parties have to see their role in perpetuating that. Um, for some outstate legislators, they can't be saying, "Oh, that's just a Madison Milwaukee thing. I don't want to pay attention." Or for in legislators in Madison and Milwaukee, it can't be, "Oh, I just want to guard our own and protect our own little world." We need, they need to think about how can the success that's been enjoyed in some places be extended. Yes, tariffs, tariffs, it's when you're looking throughout history, I'm not sure you can find examples where tariffs have actually worked, at least in this country. Now, President Trump, he's just a born negotiator. So we'll see if what he's trying to get accomplished there bears itself out. That may be 6 months to a year down the road, though. I'm not sure if there's a consensus on that yet. I do think that some of the challenges to academic research will are not long-term productive. When you look at UW-Madison, for example, it's sixth largest research university in the country. UW-Milwaukee, Marquette, Medical College of Wisconsin, increasingly places like Eau Claire, La Crosse, Green Bay, those universities are quite strong. So those kinds of things can hurt in the long run. Well, I mentioned mRNA research and some of the challenges there now at the federal level. There are 22 mRNA programs federally financed that'll go away. And that's a big hole to fill. I think in general, that kind of research pays for itself over time. There are examples, of course, where it doesn't, but I think in general, it's part of that foundation.
We had a question pop up. I generally don't answer the questions from the audience or take the questions from the audience, but I think it's an interesting question. So Inside Wisconsin asked, do you think there's an opportunity to sort of reshore some of these tech industries that have gone, and is that real? Would this bring back industries that maybe have left before?
It would probably be hard to reshore the chip industry in particular. I think you might be seeing something, well, and this is not just necessarily tech, but steel industry. I think you might be seeing some things there. I think the auto industry might be seeing some of that going on. Again, it's kind of early. It's only been a matter of months, I think, with most of the tariffs. But I worry, for example, in life sciences and that kind of research, because if federal funding in particular dries up, will we lose the talent base? Will folks go to Europe or Asia or wherever else? Because many of the researchers came from some of those locations originally. Maybe they'd move back if if the research has got to a certain extent. So there could be examples of both. But I guess I worry the most around life sciences research.
So you've mentioned her name a couple of times, but earlier this month, the Tech Council board announced that Maggie Brickerman is going to be the next Tech Council president. Someone you and I both know, and I've certainly seen her come of age in the investment space and the technology space. I'm sure there will be a lot that you will share, and that much of it not necessarily appropriate to tell a statewide audience. But I'm curious, are there things that you can share as you're thinking about her first 90 days, advice that you would give her to hit the ground running?
Well, you're right. I suppose I should, by the way, Maggie just had a baby, so she's
Wow.
So she's preoccupied in some ways. So you're right. I mean, I don't want to tell the world advice before I tell her, but I think just be yourself. Some of the ways that I have been doing this particular job may not necessarily apply to her. And she came out of a really, intense competition. I think there were our headhunter said there were 123 applications. So she's already impressed our board, obviously, which made the selection. And yeah, I think be yourself and just lean on things that she already knows, and don't be afraid to go to our board of directors for advice. We have that large board, it's like 50 plus members, but we also have a smaller executive committee, which does a lot of heavy lifting on its own. So I think there's that, and just build on our own contacts. So those are three things that come to mind.
So what do you consider your biggest accomplishment? Think back, if you just, if I know it's hard, but if you picked one, what would be the biggest accomplishment?
Wow.
As tech council president, so we won't go all the way back, but
Yeah. Yeah.
kids don't count.
That would
They
be
do count, but not for this answer. But
not this answer. Besides, that would be a history lesson. So we go all the way down. Um, this, I think we have been a part of pushing the envelope around investments in Wisconsin's early stage economy, whether it was qualified new business venture, the Badger Fund of Funds, most recently the Wisconsin Investment Fund. I think just generally, again, setting the table, trying to be a convener, trying to be a communicator. Um, that's that's one. I think raising the level of conversation about tech, that may be the biggest one, because that could have prompted more of the conversation around in the investing, uh, sort of center in Wisconsin. Um, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's probably being able to communicate the possibilities and the message about what technology growth means to Wisconsin's economic growth in general. That might be it.
um, I know the Tech Caucus is something, it's
Yeah.
one of the more novel, and I guess a good question is, can something be more novel? I don't know how to sort of think that through, but it's a
Yeah.
very novel element to what the work you've done. Can you tell us just quickly a little bit about what that is?
Oh, sure. The Tech Caucus is something we actually didn't start that long ago, 3, 4 years. It is a bipartisan, bicameral group, and it's not a formal committee of the legislature at all. It's just a group of lawmakers who are interested in general about the tech space, and we try to convene here and there um, around their schedules. But one of the more interesting things we've done with that, and sometimes there are meetings embedded in this, is field trips. You know, take some of those folks out to places that really really provide examples of what Wisconsin can and should do. Epic, Exact Sciences, Promega, Faith Technologies, Shine down in Rock County. Those are, and we've had good, strong crowds for all of that. And so we're able to work with the co-chairs in that. Again, both parties, both houses, and bounce some ideas off them from time to time, and hey, here's what's possibly next.
Yeah.
So, so
Um, as we wrap up, Tom, and I will hopefully have some time to do one of our infamous whiskey summits where we go and drink bourbon and talk about life and family and careers and
uh,
business. So I'll have a
with
chance.
your special blend or something, yeah.
That's right. But I want to make sure I'd say that I'll say this to you privately. I want to make sure I say it publicly as well. I think about this a lot. There's a lot of people that do good work, and there are even fewer who do meaningful work, and then a very small number who do the kind of work that leaves a legacy. And so, someone who has known you for decades, I've been on your executive committee, I've been your employee, I consider you a mentor, I consider you my friend.
Thank you.
Your work,
Yes.
your life has without a doubt mattered. Like your fingerprints will stand the test of time. And I just want to thank you for leaving a foundation and a legacy that we can both celebrate today, but the rest of us can build on. And on behalf of all of us, on behalf of the state of Wisconsin, Tom, thank you for the work you've done.
Oh, thank you, Zach. Again, it's, when I think about folks who are here within this, with who we've touched over time, or, you're a perfect example because you've seen this from so many different angles. Folks like Angela and Julie here at the office, and Joe. Just yeah, I feel like it's a pretty great network of folks who have all contributed. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you, Tom. I also want to thank our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, for supporting the program. Again, as I said, Tom, thank you for a great conversation. Thank you to all of you around the state for spending your lunch with us. This conversation and all of these lunch update programs are made possible by our sponsors, and you can find them on our website at madisonbiz.com. And so thank you, and we'll see you all next time on Lunch Update.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Take care.